36-hour alert for a moderate to high risk of respiratory irritation, all due to red tide.
That impacts parts of Collier, Lee, Sarasota, Manatee, Pinellas County beaches. NOAA adds Charlotte's and Monroe County, so the Keys, also could see elevated risk with onshore wind. To break this down further, we'll also bring in Fox 4 meteorologist Andrew Shipley for some context on this. So Andrew, take us through what this means.
Yeah, the NOAA issued this alert, and that means that when winds are blowing onshore or along the shoreline, that means that the red tide, that can push up aerosolized neurotoxins up into the air. So obviously we're continuing to monitor that. I did speak to FGCU today about the ongoing red tide, and this is what they had to say.
Tide has continued to bloom off southwest Florida since Hurricane Ian flushed nutrients into the waterways. FGCU Water School's Dr. Mike Parson says he's advising beachgoers to try a different section of beach if you're experiencing red tide irritation.
If you go to one section of beach and your eyes are burning and there's dead fish, chances are you can just go a mile or two down the coastline and it'll be fine.
This is due to wind direction and the topography of the coastline. While Dr. Parsons is not as concerned as he was during the 2018 and 2019 super blooms, he does find it interesting that the bloom is still going strong.
Potential concern is the fact that red tide usually ends by this time of year.
Dr. Parsons says it's truly a wait and see for how long the red tide will last, but he notes the red tide appears to be moving up and down the coastline. That was seen in Wednesday's updated NOAA red tide levels. That update showed red tide not only off Sarasota and Charlotte counties in medium to high concentrations, but also off of Sanibel, Captiva, and Fort Myers Beach, and newly added Collier County beaches that were vastly clean of red tide in recent weeks.
Seeing that net movement south. So, one question is it just moving? It's almost like it hopped in a car and moved down the coast, or hopped in a boat, or is it spreading?
But why isn't the bloom ended? Dr. Parson has two potential reasons to answer that question.
Like we were dealing with COVID, red tide has viruses and other pathogens that may knock it out. So are those pathogens just less active right now? Red tide needs nutrients and light. But there's a lot of other algae out there that also need nutrients and light, and often are better at getting it.
Yeah, winds this afternoon, even tomorrow, are going to be forecasted to be blowing onshore, increasing that risk for some respiratory illness across much of our beaches. Now, the other thing we're watching for you is where those beaches are, and you can see really much of this, basically southwest Florida, Sarasota County, down through Lee County, and now even Collier County are in those oranges and reds, which represents those highest risk amounts for any red tide. So unfortunately, it does look like Thursday we are going to be seeing another day of some higher forecasted respiratory illness because of red tide.